Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being the show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Bear, Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So obviously, we get our notice at the beginning of the episode, 12 weeks to open, so we got like basically 3 months to try and rapidly get this all done. So obviously they're doing all the major repairs. What can we keep? What can we not? What's completely fine and what is completely screwed? And I love the whole like trifecta that is Richie, Fack, and Marcus, and it becomes this whole back and forth of like Richie wants to do things a certain way and Fack's like, no, we should do it this way, because it's like, for one, I get it. There's almost like that male mentality of, I want to do things the easiest way. So it's like, right, let's just put some tarp up so we don't have to move the lockers. It's like, no, but it might be easier just to move the lockers. And Richie's like, no, we're not going to move the lockers. I'm actually trying to save you some extra moves. It's like, because you're going to have to move the lockers, you're going to put them back. Like, we all want, like I said, it's that male mentality of like, oh, we want to do things the simplest way and the easiest way, but it might actually be the hardest way. It's like, it's just like that thing of like, we've all done it where it's like, oh, you're taking groceries out of the car and you're just like, I'm going to take the least amount of trips as possible, so I'm going to try and get almost everything all at once. It's that same type of mentality. We've all been like that. I've been like that since I was a kid. I'm 31 and I still do that. So it's almost that same mentality. And I just love the fact this Fack ends up calling Natalie and it's like, did you just call mom? It's like, yo, he just totally called mom, because Marcus is trying to be like the middleman where he's like, well, you did call mom, but Richie, you are wrong. So I love that. And I love, because for Richie, he's still trying to find his place. Once again, everyone, ever since last season, like he felt like he had a place at the restaurant back when Mike was here, because that was part of the ebb and flow, but everyone's changing, everyone's adapting, and he's been feeling alone, and it doesn't feel like he has a place here. So that's why he's overcompensating, like, yo, do it my way, I'm supervising. And like, what are you really supervising? And then it's like, whoa, there's a mode situation. It's like, no, we don't have a mode situation. It's like, if there was a mode, there'd be this, and he bangs the ceiling and it falls out. I love he gets hit with like a ball or whatever. He's like, is that it? And then like something else falls down and hits him. I'm like, yeah, that's poetic karma. And it's just a thing of, because Natalie got called about the mode, but it's like, oh, Fack, did you call about the mode? Because he's the one that kept being like, because I love him and Richie being like, oh, you want me to call mom? And she's like, no, go ahead, call Nat, call mom. He's like, oh, you don't think I won't do it? Yeah, I'll call mom. We'll call mom and see what happens. And then they're getting quieter and quieter while they're saying it. And then he's like, mom, and Richie covers his mouth. I love that whole bit. But then you see that look on Richie's face where he feels so defeated, because it wasn't even Fack who called the mode. Marcus is like, no, it was me. He's like I told you. And Richie's like, right, that we're all in this together, that it's an alliance. And, once again, it's just like he feels like every time he's trying to do something, he's failing at it. And so in that moment, it was like, damn, dude, like this was supposed to be my moment to shine. And I can't let anyone know that this is that important to me. Why I'm trying so hard, because I've never really tried before. And now, once again, everyone else is getting their thing. Everyone's got their place. Even Fack's got his place here because he kind of knows what he's talking about. But me, I'm the asshole. I'm the odd man out. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm sitting here like jerking myself off. Like, what am I doing with my junk in my hand, essentially? Like, that's all I really have, as we know, like, Richie was always just, hey, I sit around, we bust balls, we talk shop, I tell stories, yada, yada, yada. That's kind of been his thing. And I was just like, it's kind of becoming a well-oiled machine, even though the place is literally falling apart. It's just, it's just finding my place here when everyone else is figuring everything out, so. We spent a bit of time with Sydney, kind of learning a little bit more about her family situation. We knew a little bit about, like, okay, she's obviously living with her dad. We kind of found out what was the final, like, nail in a coffin for her business, and that kind of eventually, the final nail that led to her, like, having to move in with her dad. I thought it was interesting that when, like, Carmen was asking about her mom, she was like, yeah, my mom's cool. It's like, it felt like she was kind of dodging the subject, because she's like, yeah, my dad kind of supports me, but he kind of obviously has his issues and worries about the career path. I even love Carmen being like, does he think you're a loser? She's like, no, why? He's like, I never said he thinks I'm a loser. Why, do you think he thinks I'm a loser? It's like, no. But it's just like, right, you're working a job that you don't really get paid for, that's really not worth it in the end. So especially because she wants to go they don't say the word, but I can only, when they're talking about stars, I can only assume they're talking about, and especially in the restaurant business, is Michelin stars. And that's something she wants to go after, which for Carmen, yeah, like the fact is when he got the 3, it's like, oh, there's that moment of like, okay, panic for the first 10 seconds because you're like, okay, that means I got these. That means I have to do everything I can to upkeep them as well, which is like something I never really think about because you can lose your Michelin stars. It's not something I think about too much, you know? But it's like, yeah, you can lose them. So it is something you have to upkeep. So that adds even more stress to your job of like, you kind of have to make everything amazing and flawless and perfect. So it comes with a little bit of like liking it, but also kind of I think Carmen has a love-hate relationship with that whole situation, a lot of his career path regardless. And I guess it's a thing of he doesn't want to dissuade Sydney because it is something she wants to go after, but it's also that thing of I want to dissuade you because we learned from a later conversation he has with Claire that is like, yeah, I told Miss Kelly, like, she reached out to me because her son wanted to go into the restaurant and become a chef, and I told him not to do that. And it's like, yeah, I don't even follow my own advice because here I am trying to open a restaurant, which ties back in beautifully with Sid and her dad. Who I was looking at, I was like, is that Robert Townsend? Because of the credits, I was like, yeah, it super was Robert Townsend. That's dope. And he was telling this whole story about Sid's mom, and I thought it was actually a really adorable story of just kind of like, right, we're 20-something, kind of one of our dates, and the car breaks down, and, you know, I didn't really know what to do, and she's kind of doing the Southern Belle thing. I love that because I do that just in my personal life from time to time, just because I always love it. Oh, Mr. Beauregard, I do declare. Type of situation, and I love it's like, oh yeah, your mom was like a black Southern Belle. Oh, Mr. Beauregard, I thought that was just so cute. It does seem like, based on the conversation, it does seem like Sydney's mom is gone. I was like, right, so that's why you were kind of a little weird around when Carmen was kind of talking about her a little bit. It's like, that's why. I guess, like, they get around every on her birthday, they get around, they celebrate her by telling stories about her. But obviously her dad is worried because it's like, right, you're going to be, you've already gone down this route once and it kind of blew up in your face. And he's like, yeah, your cousin, like, he has a job for you if you ever want to. But she's like, no, like, why should I, like, you know, like, she's going to be working on, because he was like, oh, like a job at Boeing. It's just, she's going to be the, what's that job specifically? The people who have the things and they kind of like, direct kind of like planes in a traffic sense. But she's like, because for her dad, it's like this whole situation was not the main plan. It was the backup plan. I wonder, is he talking about the original like business she had? Was that always like the backup plan, or was working at the restaurant it seems like that was going to be the backup plan, but just kind of tied her over until she figured something else. But now it's like you're putting all your eggs in one basket, which is like you're never supposed to do that, as the saying goes. But it's like you are putting everything into this, and it's like she's like, the difference is I was working alone, you know. Now I have a partner. It's like, but do you trust him? And she's like, yes. And he just doesn't want her to fail again, especially because we weren't there. We never got to see what the aftermath of like everything falling apart for Sid's last business. We don't know what that did to her, like what kind of spiral that sent her down. So her dad might be worried that it's like, yeah, I don't want to see you in that situation again, because I think going through that once is bad enough, and especially when you're putting your everything into this, because that was something Carmen was saying, like, right, it has to kind of be your everything if you're going to go for it. So it is that thing of like, if you're going to go for it, but when you put your everything into this going for that, the downside of it is so great that I think it will break you. It's kind of my interpretation of kind of like Carmen's warning, but I think it's probably because this situation probably did break Sydney before, and her dad's probably worried, like, I don't know what, if you have another fall like that again, I don't know what that's going to do to you. Because my understanding is like her dad is sick, isn't he? Maybe he isn't. Maybe that was just kind of me just throwing that in there. I don't remember if they've said anything about him being sick or not. But even that line of, she's like, wow, it's kind of weird to think about, I'm older than she was. I was like, that's depressing to think about. Like, right, the thought of, oh, I'm older then in her case, like, oh, I'm older than my mom was when she died. It's like that's, or maybe even not even older, the same age. That's got to be a weird experience, a weird thing to think about, because it's like what Sydney's like. Because I don't know how old the actress who plays Sydney is. She might be in her like late 20s, maybe early 30s. So if even that, she might even be like kind of in her mid 20s. But it's like that's got to be a weird sensation of like, yeah, I'm old. I'm about the same age, if not older, than my mom when she died. So that's got to be a weird thing. And I'm sure thinking about all that, you know, mom's birthday, it's got all that kind of resurfacing. But then also, you know, with everything kind of going on with the restaurant and the menus they're trying to put together. Circling a little bit back to Carmen, I mentioned Claire before, which I saw her and I was like, is that Molly Gordon? I was like, I think I knew that she was in this season, but I can't remember. I haven't. The first thing I ever saw her in was Animal Kingdom. I was like, man, because it's been a hot minute. Because she was only in the first 2 seasons. Because I know she's been in stuff since then, but I want to say that's probably like the last time I saw her, and that was like what 5 years ago. I was like, man, she probably looks exactly the same, but it's been so long. Then I'm almost like, man, you look so different. I mean, you know, because she's like probably in her mid to late 20s. Because I think she was like in her early 20s. She might have actually been a teenager when she was doing. Because I didn't start watching Animal Kingdom until when it was roughly in its 4th season. So I think when last time I saw her, like looked her up around that time, was like she was in her early 20s. So she might have been like late teens, pushing early 20s when she was first on the show. I could be misremembering. So, but it's just she seems so different. But I was like, maybe it's just because it's been a while. I was like, wasn't there a movie she's in that came out super recently? Is it that theater camp movie with Ben Platt? I don't know. I think there was something I came across that I saw that she was in. Maybe it was this, but I could have sworn it was that theater camp movie. I could be completely mistaken. Either way, tensions and all that aside, seems like her and Carmen have history, which is interesting. Kind of, you know, talking about what they're up to. I don't know if she's someone that he went to culinary school with too, or just someone he dated while he was back in culinary school. What's the whole? Because he's like, yeah, I got the restaurant. She's like, oh, what's it called? Oh, she's like, you gave it the name, huh? He's like, what? There's no way you know the name. She's like, yeah, I know the name. He's like, no, I bet you $1 million. There's no way you would remember the name. She's like, oh, I remember the name. He's like, why would you remember that? She's like, because you're the bear, and I remember the name. Because it's like, right, you are someone important to me. Like, I'm one. Because the way she talks about it, it seems like they go back a ways. Like, it might be like I don't know necessarily a girl next door, but like a childhood thing of like, yeah, they grew up together and stuff, so. But it seems like they have a dating history, and or maybe it's a thing of it never happened. It feels like it happened, and just things didn't work out. Or maybe things never did happen. I don't know in that regard, but I'm so curious to see. But I was like, oh yeah, how should I send you the money? It's like, maybe I should like, I forgot what was the first way he was going to say. He was like, oh, should I send it this way? It's like, yeah, and they might think that's kind of suspicious or something. He's like, yeah, that's kind of fucked up on it. He's like, yeah, so just kind of like direct, like wire it to you or something like that. And the moment like she's asking for his contact info and he starts giving her his number and he starts slowing down, I'm like, you're going to give her the wrong number, aren't you? And you changed the last digit by 1. I was like, oh, Carmen. It's because I think it's just probably scared with everything going on. Maybe it's a thing of, yeah, I kind of screwed this up once, and that was back when things were kind of okay. I'm doing what I'm doing now with a restaurant, which restaurants, that was a conversation between Sid and her dad, where it's like, yes, restaurants have a tendency to kind of fail. It's a very hard business to succeed in, probably because I don't know what the statistics are. But that is something you do hear. I'm curious, like, are there more restaurants there probably are more restaurants that fail than succeed. I'm sure that's kind of like with any business, but it's probably heavily prevalent in the restaurant business. Like I said, I'm talking out of my ass. I don't know the statistics for that, but I just know like a lot of businesses on the restaurant front do tend to fail. Doesn't, sadly, a pandemic definitely doesn't help in a lot of capacities. But either way, tangents and all that aside, I just think maybe like, right, where he was in his life the last time they might have linked up, that it's like, right, I'm not sure if I'm really in a position. I'm still so effed up because of the mic stuff. There's other contributing factors, but I'm like, I'm not in a position to really be in a relationship right now. he probably thinks like, right, we probably won't run into each other again, so it'll be fine. Now it's going to be interesting if she decides, if she somehow ends up calling him. He's like, whoa, how did you? She's like, right, the digit was off by one, so. It's only off by a single digit because it's the last number. He said 2 instead of 1. So I'm curious to see if she figures that out on her own, or like maybe they run into each other and she brings up like, yeah, I couldn't, your phone. He's like, oh, and kind of turns into a bit of an awkward thing. We'll see. Like, 'cause I think he's also doing it because he probably thinks like there's zero chance we'll run into each other again. Happenstance brought you together this one time, but it's like, yeah, but how often is life going to, throw a curveball that your way of like, oh, boomeranging someone back into your life yet again. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. Because I think she's going to be a recurring character this season. So. We also learn about Natalie being pregnant, and she hasn't, like, the moment they're like, oh, you're looking a little green and kind of a little blah, I was like, seems like she's pregnant, I guess. And just, if you kind of got that vibe, but I was like, does she not know? But it's like, no, she does know. I love that it's like, could you tell she was on the phone? I was like, who is she talking to? I was like, is she talking to her husband? And it's like, well, no, she's talking to like Jean. I even love that she's like, no, it seems like it's most likely this being the issue. And it's like, yes, Jean, you're the actual plumber. So I was like, interesting. Because she had talked about the fact is of like she never wanted to come back to this restaurant, but the moment Carmen's now running it now, and she's helping out in whatever capacity she can because she's doing everything she can to try and keep things at as much the same as possible. Which she's like, as an adult, we never really want to try anything different. Like we want to do the same thing with the same people. We never kind of really get outside of our comfort zone because like we want things easy. So I guess it'd be a lot harder to kind of, like, I don't know if she was kind of saying, like, right, it's going to be harder to kind of venture out of this because even though it's something new, it's still the same thing over again with Carmen. She already went through this with, like, Mikey, and now we're, like, going through it with Carmen kind of technically again because he didn't really do, he obviously was doing the chef thing, but he wasn't doing the restaurant, like, kind of building it from the ground up restaurant type of thing, right? So I think it's just like, right, she doesn't want to tell anyone she's pregnant with just everything that's kind of going on right now. I think it's supposed to kind of mirror a little, I think, everyone really, because everyone's kind of trying to figure things out, trying to, like Sid, everything with her family and just, is this whole, the bear situation going to, pan out, sorry. Same thing for Carmen and same thing for Richie, who's kind of feeling a little lost during all of this. So then you also have Tina and Ibra who are going to culinary school, which you can tell Ibra had his reservations. I think much kind of like how Richie's trying to find his place. I think Ibra feels a little out of place because Tina's like jumping on this opportunity because Sid was like, yo, I want you to basically be the new me. And Tina's been on her grind since last season. Like when she found that bag of like, yo, I'm good at this. Yeah, I want to put my everything into this. So she's really kind of jumping into it. But Ibra, he feels kind of lost. It's like, right, we're at a school full of Sydneys. He was like, don't look them in the eyes and stuff. And he just feels out of place because like Tina's like chop and doing her thing, and he's kind of going at his own pace. And I think he's like probably like, is it too late? I think it's almost that mentality. You can't teach a dog new tricks, and it's like I'm kind of getting out of my comfort zone, and I'm here, but do I really belong? Like like Tina's like thriving, and it's only been this one episode we've seen them there, but you could tell like he's I think it is a situation that what does create diamonds? Pressure. So that's kind of supposed to be the mentality of like this food industry business in the restaurant game and the culinary side of things. So I'm curious if that's what's going to happen with Ibra, but it just feels like he himself feels out of place. Like he almost feels like he doesn't belong here, so we'll see how that all ultimately ends up panning out. I actually almost completely forgot about the hat situation, which, in all this time, they hadn't opened Mike's locker because when they were moving the lockers, they ended up cutting it open, and the only thing in there was a baseball cap. But it had sentimentality for all of them. It's kind of it was a nice memory for Richie, for for Nat and Carmen. And once again, that's always going to be this thing that's still lingering above their heads, everything in that capacity. Which I even love Sid being like, was there really only a hat in there? It's like, what's that? It's like, oh yeah, it was Mike's locker. She's like, was there really only a hat in there? He's like, Sid. He's like, come on, man, don't be an asshole. She's like, what? I'm not being an asshole. I'm not an asshole. And she says it in the most adorable way, like, I'm not an asshole. It's like, yeah, because it's like, oh, it's just a hat. But it's symbolism for like, right, it's just a hat. But it's like, yeah, it's probably one of the few things, like, they probably avoid a lot of things related to Mike in that regard. I mean, you're in a place that is nothing but memories of him, sure, but it's like, yeah, like something that they all kind of associate with and have a memory to. Like, it's, once again, the significance of the symbolism. So it's just, I get, and I even love Marcus will kind of walk away kind of smiling a little bit, like, yeah, it's kind of an asshole move you just just allocate it. It's like, oh, it's just the hats in there. It's like, it's much more than that, so. I'm really interested to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.